Hello, you're very welcome along to Matchbook Meets, a brand new series where we interview a range of different personalities from different sports. It's Daniel Hussey here, your host, and I'm delighted to welcome a good friend of mine for our first guest, Andrew Blair White. Andrew Blair White, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Yeah, very good, Dan. Thanks for having me on. Should be a good bit of fun. This nice little chat about horse racing. So yeah, no, looking forward to getting involved.
Exactly that. So yeah, we're just going to have a chat about horse racing. If you are watching on the live stream, do get your comments in. We will have a bit of a Q&A for the end. I'm sure there's plenty of questions for Andrew there. So if you are watching as well, do give us a thumbs up on YouTube. It'll just help us reach more people. That'd be brilliant. So yeah, Andrew, I want to kind of take you back a small bit to how you first got into horse racing. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I suppose like quite a lot of people from a non-racing background. It was my dad used to go up to Leopardstown quite a bit. We don't live that far from Leopardstown, and I suppose him at my age now used to go quite a lot. He used to be a kind of season ticket holder and a member there, and when I was around 14 or 15, up until then, I hadn't really kind of batted an eyelid at racing. But one Christmas, we decided we'd go up one of the days, and it ended up being the 29th, the day of the Ryanair hurdle. And it was actually the day Hurricane Fly beat Jedski in that kind of pulsating finish. I think it was 2014. And well, that was a fair day to get yourself hooked on it all, and from there, kind of spiraled away. 2015 was the first time I really kind of sat down and properly watched Cheltenham, and from then on, it's kind of grown more and more. And I suppose these days now there's very few national hunt meetings up in Leopardstown that go by without me trying to frequent up there, because it's, as I say, it's within walking distance. So that's where it's all ended up going. I still love going to the races with my dad. I go over to Cheltenham with him. I go up to Leopardstown with him. Go pretty much everywhere. So it's been a family thing, and it's been fantastic for us, and to kind of develop him getting kind of back into the game, because he had a bit of time away from it, and me growing in it.
So it sounds like it was maybe a gradual process in terms of you got into it and then gradually got more and more into it. Or was that kind of the way it kind of went for you in terms of horse race?
Yeah, exactly. I suppose it's a sport that takes a little bit of time to grow on people, because there's an awful lot of kind of knowledge attached with it, and kind of speak in your own kind of different language, really, when you're watching it. So it was something that initially I remember going up to that first day, and my dad had told me to go down and get the racing post, and I was looking through it, and I think I was trying to take on Hurricane Fly and Jet with a horse called Plinth. I thought Plinth might be able to beat the two of them. Now that shows you where I was coming from in terms of lack of knowledge. But I suppose over time it's grown and grown, and certain horses have helped do that. Certain meetings have helped do that, and now, as I say, it's probably up there. I've always played cricket from a young age, but in terms of watching a sport, it's probably become number one on my list of priorities.
Yeah, so like obviously, and you've touched on this already, but Leopardstown being so close to you and being like HQ as you call it, it was like your home from home almost with horse racing. And I guess that was very important for you to get involved with the sport.
Yeah, exactly. And ever since I turned 18, they have the great Club 30 membership up in Leopardstown, which is, I think, 100 quid or maybe 125 quid this year. And you get you access to all 25 meetings. And when you're thinking that it costs nearly 100 quid to get to the 4 days over Christmas, it seemed a no brainer. And I think when you have that feeling of being kind of closer, no different to having a season ticket for a football team or something like that, you kind of feel you want to go more and more. And the more you go racing, the more you understand, the more you see certain horses, and it becomes easier then, especially with jumps racing, to kind of pick horses throughout the season that are going to end up going towards Cheltenham. Because you might have seen them at Punchestown in November, you might have seen them at Christmas time at Leopardstown, and you begin to build up affiliations. And those are the kind of the good stories, and I suppose good news stories about racing that jumps racing does provide. And being at Leopardstown so much has helped me build up some of those affiliations with certain horses.
Yeah, because it's very important to get young people into racing. And I do think sometimes those tickets on the day, the bandwagon type of sports fans, 30, €35, you're not necessarily going to go. But like the likes of Leopardstown doing under 30 membership, Cheltenham is doing that as well. I think that's a very good avenue for people to get into the sport.
Yeah, exactly. You're trying to promote it to as many younger people as possible, and trying to get that throughput of different personnel going. And I know myself, like from school friends, that it's sometimes quite hard to to sell a day at the races over here in Ireland. It seems to be, from my small kind of exposure to English racing, it seems to be more of an event over there, more of a kind of, you'd get a big mix of kind of boys and girls even. In Irish meetings, you go to the majority of them, it would be 90% male, 10% female, I'd say, and that might be me being a bit generous. So you're trying to build it up so that you can get as many people going as possible. And I know a lot of the courses in Ireland now and over in England obviously are doing these student days. A few people put their nose up at them. I think they're a great thing, because even if you get 10,000 people going to a student's day at Leopardstown, it only takes 50 of them catching the bug, and you might get 50 more Club 30 members or something like that, and you 50 more people that might go to the next meeting. And if you can constantly keep building that over between a course of a year, you might build up another 1,000 fans, another 2,000 fans that might get into it, because you're kind of fighting a little bit of a losing battle against, the likes of football and rugby over here, and obviously hurling, all of this. So you've got to fight your way, and it's got stunts like that and ways of attracting new people that are going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess moving on a small bit to Cheltenham, and I know my own experience with horse racing. I thoroughly enjoyed Leopardstown Christmas festivals, but I didn't properly catch the bug until I stepped foot in Cheltenham, the mecca of horse racing. Can you talk to us a little bit about first walking into Cheltenham and your memories of it?
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I went over first time for the November meeting. I think it was 2017. I was in first year of college at the time, and I couldn't believe it, really. And I thought I'd seen some obviously excellent courses, the likes of Leopardstown, Punchestown, Fairyhouse, all these great courses in Ireland, and yet it couldn't kind of tie the shoelaces of this place. You're walking up from the town. It felt like kind of almost walking up Wembley Way. There's this kind of sense of anticipation going up there, and then once you get in and you kind of go up to the stand and you can see Cleve Hill, you can see the whole panoramic view, and it's just something to behold. It was probably nice for me going over firstly to the November meeting, just slightly smaller, that you can almost make your way around it. And then it was only until 2020 that I went over for the week for the actual festival itself, and obviously plagued by the end of it by COVID starting all, but it was a serious week, and one that we've ended up getting into habits of even doing stuff after racing, before racing, and the whole kind of, I suppose, box package of it is what makes Cheltenham so special.
Yeah, it's hard to describe to people who aren't into Cheltenham as much as we are how like the whole season builds to Cheltenham, and I think it would anyway without Cheltenham, as in you have a 3 mile staying division. You'd still talk about the 3 mile staying division throughout the year, but you almost have this World Cup at Cheltenham. And I think the best thing about Cheltenham almost it is when it's over, you have Punchestown and Aintree to look forward to as well. It's just perfectly set around that Paddy's Day weekend.
Yeah, and you're hoping for kind of little repeat clashes. And I suppose over the last couple of years, we maybe haven't had quite as many English runners over at Punchestown that you might have wanted to. But you think this year, the case in point being Shishkin and Energamine, we've had round 1 at Ascot. We're hopefully going to have round 2 at Cheltenham, and you might even have a round 3 at Punchestown, which would be absolutely special. And those are the sort of clashes and the sort of horses that are going to bring more and more people to go racing, because from my small amount of years of watching racing and being at Irish courses for 5 and 6 years at this stage, like the amount of people that will go to meetings where the big horses are running, like even the other week at Punchestown, it was a relatively average card, but both Dysart Dynamo and Bob Ollinger are running. There's a big crowd there, all around the pre-parade ring at Punchestown, 10 deep. Where's Bob? Where's Bob? Is he out yet? Is he out? All of this stuff, all trying to clamber for a photo. Where's Henry? Can I get a photo with him? All of this stuff. And it's great for racing, to have those connections. You had it obviously with Faugheen, the Hurricane Flies, and obviously before my time, the Moscow Flyers and Janolis of the world. But, these are the sort of horses that really bring people together and make it kind of so special and make people want to go racing. And that's the whole kind of, if we're looking for a solution, good horses bring people to racing, and these good horses are doing so.
And before I move on, like when I think of good horses, like my personal favorite was Vitor. I don't know why I had such an affinity towards him. I just did. For you, is there any, when I say good horses, are there 2 or 3 that stand out over the last few years for you?
Well, the one similar probably to you with Vitor is Duvan for me. Always has been. Probably, uh, as I say, first Cheltenham Festival I really watched 2015. He bounced clear in the Supreme. The next year he bounced clear in the Arkle. Managed to see him a few times at Leopardstown, and he was just so good. Like he travelled everywhere on the bridle. When he came back after his injury and won the Clonmel Oil, over 2.5 even, and he beat Monaghan, who ended up finishing fourth in the Gold Cup that year, beat him 20 lengths. It just goes to show how good he was. It was one of the, I suppose, more unjust things about racing in recent years, that we probably didn't see that horse win a champion chase, because he was well good enough to go and do so. But certainly when you think of good horses, and probably a horse that really got me into the game, it was Duvan.
Definitely for me, like looking at yourself now, Andrew, and you've spoken a lot about your passion for horse racing, but what made you go from that to that first trip in Leopardstown to making videos on YouTube? You probably won't like me saying this, but I went and watched your first video that you put up on YouTube there just for this chat. And I was very surprised at how polished you were, considering it was your first video. And I understand you were doing a bit of a blog, but tell us a little bit about that push. Were you any nerves going into that video, for example, and how far you've come over the last few years?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, when you're putting yourself out there, you're there to be shot at, and you kind of know that as well. I suppose a combination of things. It was getting to the stage. Obviously, I just finished school. I was in college. Quite a lot of my friends didn't necessarily follow racing, but they kind of wanted tips. So you get to a Cheltenham, people are texting you asking for a few tips. And also, I just started journalism in DIT at the time, and they were kind of telling you to go out and, make yourself a blog, or try and do something kind of external apart from the course. So I started off, I made myself a Wix website and started posting a few articles, and tried to build it that way. And then I decided, look, might as well try and make a couple of videos and see whether that kind of makes any sort of an impression. I wouldn't want to go back myself and watch those first couple of videos, because they were relatively horrendous, me sitting in my front room. But I suppose there was that kind of feeling of trying to put yourself out there, trying to build some type of audience in doing so. And people these days, I get a couple of people asking me, how to start up and stuff like that. You've just got to go and throw yourself in the deep end. And I'm not going to tell you it's easy to start with, because it's not. It's very hard to build an audience, and it's hard to, not get despondent with some people that will call you out. And I remember the first year I did it, I think I started around the Dublin Racing Festival, and I was putting up a daily video a day for Fairy House, the Easter meeting, and it got to, I think, the third video. I'd only put up one winner, I'd say, in the 2 days racing. A couple of kind of nasty enough comments, and that's the sort of stuff you have to deal with. Like, if you're going to throw yourself out there, you're going to get that. You're going to get an awful lot more positive feedback than negative feedback, if you're honest with people, if you're transparent, if you're trying to do the right thing as well. And over time, that's kind of ended up, plateauing, that you get the, people that want to watch you, they stick by you. People that don't fancy it, they don't have to watch it. There's plenty more things to watch on YouTube, on Netflix, plenty more things to do with your life than sit down and watch me for 20 minutes. But if you want to go and do so, you get what you get with me. I say it as it is. There's probably a fair bit of propaganda to certain trainers in there. There's a fair bit of, favorite horses, cliff horses in there, but kind of that's all part of it. I like that. That's the way I follow racing, and thank goodness that plenty of people have been very positive and have supported me greatly, and I can only thank them enough.
Yeah, and I do find yourself very engaging, that even when I fundamentally disagree with you, I'm smiling and laughing away at you, and it shouldn't be taken too seriously, because at the end of the day, it's a sport, and we're going to be watching. I'm going to be backing a horse anyway, regardless of what you say. But you mentioned the propaganda, which is a great segue to what I was going to get into. So how did you go from that first video at the Dublin Racing Festival, which I sat through and watched there yesterday, to outside Foxrock Church, asking for the shack to go in, and very numerous other horses? You can maybe tell the viewers a little bit about that. For some of them know you very well, and some of them don't. So
yeah, exactly. Look, it started off, I will admit, after a night out, and I was walking home, and I was about to. I was thinking about putting a few horses up for the following day, and I hadn't started doing anything like I do now. Obviously, I kind of write stuff for for which bookie now, and it's kind of very kind of set and done properly. At that stage, I just used to put up a few things on Instagram, and anyway, ended up being outside Foxrock Church kind of, and I kind of did this big gaiety sort of looking at the skies, please pray for a winner sort of thing. And then the horse won. And then everyone said, oh, geez, you got to do that again. You got to do that again. And the first, I think, 5 times I did it, the horse won the next day. So I ended up calling it the Midnight Tipper. And it's ended up just being a bit of a little bit of a piss take at this stage, if we're all calling it what it is. But people seem to get good enjoyment out of it. I try to mix it up these days every now and then. I throw in a bit of an Aston Villa song in there last week. I try to get, I throw myself on the ground sometimes. And all these things, they end up working out, and certainly I take the mick out of myself, but that's just the sort of person I am, really. And some people laugh at me, some people laugh with me, but as long as people are getting a bit of enjoyment out of it, it's all good fun.
So that first horse winning is to blame for those regular Foxrock Church visits. Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, very much so. It was a horse of Tony Martin's, actually, called Acclamatio as well. He won a flat handicap over a mile and a half. So if you want to give out to anybody, it's Tony Martin and his strong travelling horses in nosebands, because I've had a good affiliation with them ever since.
And there's a couple of, I wouldn't say viral videos. Well, to a small extent, there would be the album photo. This is before I knew you, or the album photo, his first Gold Cup video. Was it you videoing your reaction to it? Just again, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was again around Cheltenham time. I'm on Instagram and Twitter a fair bit. I was more so back then actually on Instagram, just with kind of my friends more than anything, because they'd have been the only people I'd have been given a few tips to. But I backed album photo throughout the year. It was kind of almost my first real proper anti-post. One where I got stuck in at 33s back in September, kind of backed them all the way throughout the year, and hadn't had a very good festival. I was having a rubbish Friday as well. I think Sir Eric had unfortunately passed away at the first race of the day. It wasn't looking very good. It was all a bit glum. And then Willie Mullins is losing horses left, right, and centre. And album photos just popping away. And you know the way album photo is, he's actually a rubbish jumper. He's a legend of a horse, but he cannot jump for peanuts. So you're kind of heart and mouth all the way, but he's turning in. He just has to be Bristol to my on the outside. And I start getting very excited, pick up the phone and immediately start roaring at the TV. Anyway, he ends up winning. I open the windows in my attic, start roaring out the side of my house. A couple of people down in the road below thinking I was an absolute nutter. There's actually a few people that live up the road from me that have never looked at me the same ever after this. But it was all in the moment. It was decent fun. And it was a great win. It was probably my most profitable winner ever, really, album photo, with all the anti-post bets put on him. So it was probably more relief and kind of a lot of joy all mixed into one, and probably took it a little bit over the top, but it certainly went to a few places, and some people always still remind me of it, so I'm not getting away with it.
It's such engaging content, though, I have to say, and you kind of build on that, and you now and again you do a Paul Nolan propaganda and stuff like that, but it is great engagement, whether someone not agrees the wrong word, but even if someone not necessarily with you 100% what you're saying, it's just great to watch, and it's an easy watch as well. Do you know what I mean? So fair play to you for that.
Yeah, well, as I say, it's just not taking things too seriously. People take things very seriously a lot of the time, especially in racing. And if you don't take yourself too seriously, people seem to enjoy it to a certain degree. Of course, there's some people that think I'm an absolute twit, and that's fair enough. They're very entitled to their opinion. I've had a few people saying, "What on earth are you doing?" And that's fair enough. I can completely understand that. But I'm putting myself out there to do that. Even the things like Josh always pings me down with these videos of me dancing now.
Can you just tell us that there's that dancing, the 5-second one, isn't it? That gets used all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know, and I'm just there enjoying my night. Who would you prefer to be with on a night out? Would you prefer to be the man in the middle of the dance floor, setting shapes, or the one at the bar filming the other guy doing the dance floor? But anyway, Josh always, because I can never get him in return, even though he cracks some class shapes on the dance floor. I can never video him in return, so I don't have anything on him. But no, every time now that there's one of those Let's Talk Racing kind of any sort of good news, there's me doing this little kind of jig side to side, which is my only dance move really. But again, it's if people get a laugh out of it, it's done its job.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Let's Talk Racing, because we were talking a little bit off air and how you guys have grown so well. I guess it's such engaging content to an up and coming audience that are watching racing, and it's just your anti-post Cheltenham and during last summer, if I'm not mistaken, nonsense stuff. But I'm there sitting there watching all 17, 18 minutes of it. It's great stuff altogether.
Yeah, look, it's gone. It's grown to probably more than we thought it would do at this stage of its progression. We've always kind of done a few things together. Ever after I started my kind of YouTube videos myself, Josh was doing his own videos, and one year we kind of collaborated on a video. Then the next year he was working in the Racing Post at the time, very kindly invited me on to I think it was the Racing Riot podcast at the time, to do a few things there. And then it was kind of in COVID. COVID started obviously in around March, April 2020, and we were thinking, will we do something, try and build something for a younger audience, try to engage as much people as we can. We had a few months trying different things. It was Racing Central for a while. It worked to a certain degree, but it probably ran its course organically, and we ended up then splitting off into Let's Talk Racing, and we've tried something a little bit different in terms of that. We use kind of proper cameras. Really, we'd be on like a call like this, but we don't record on this type of call, which I think it adds to the quality wise. It adds to a little bit of the feeling that we're trying to involve people in terms of them being at a triangular point of the video, that they're almost at the end of the table with us, that I'm sitting here at the bar, Josh is sitting there at the bar, and you're in the middle watching the two of us and trying to get involved. And that seems to have worked. We've gotten great figures. We've got a very loyal bunch of supporters and viewers, which we're extremely happy with and extremely grateful for. And I think the real eye opener actually was I managed to be over for the November meeting at Cheltenham with Josh for a few of the days, and the amount of people coming up to us in person, like I don't know where these people get the balls to do that. I wouldn't go up to anybody in person, but like coming up and saying hello and saying that they enjoyed the stuff, it was a very surreal experience in a lot of respects, but it was all great fun, and at the moment it's going great. And we've obviously got the Racing TV Association at the moment, which is helping the content. It makes it look a little bit better and a little bit slicker, that you can kind of be talking about these good horses, and the race is on your screens, and that seems to have been an appropriate way of people getting more engaged. So fingers crossed we can drum it up. We probably slightly overbat the whole Cheltenham thing. As you say, we're doing Cheltenham anti-post videos in the middle of June, but people like it, and you got to smell what sells. And me and Josh, we don't really care too much for flat racing. We're more jumps men, and there's no point trying to make videos about something that you don't necessarily enjoy, because it comes across so easily that you're not keen on it.
Yeah.
And as for with jumps racing, I would like to hope it comes across that me and Josh are as keen as you're going to get for guys our age. So I think people understand that, and they know what they're going to get when they come onto a Let's Talk Racing video.
Yeah, I'm definitely worse for tuning into all those Cheltenham videos, no matter what time of year. I still don't think you can get enough Cheltenham content somehow. Like, do you know what I mean?
Oh no! The day after the previous meeting, you can go fire in again. What's going to win next year's Supreme, or whatever.
That's probably the best time, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a never-ending cycle of it, but people enjoy it. I know people say it dominates it, but like again, in terms of creating engaging content that people want to see, people want Cheltenham content. There's no getting away from it, and if that's what they want, that's what we'll provide.
And that Let's Talk Racing audience, it goes back to what we were starting. The key point here is like getting people to go racing and involved in racing. And I'd say genuinely, a lot of people watch your videos and get a little bit more passionate for racing. I remember hearing Josh saying, get down to Ascot for the Clarence House, building this massive race up. And of course, it exceeded expectations. But if that makes one person go out and watch, go to Ascot, then start going racing, getting into the sport, then it's worth its weight in gold, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, exactly. And we're probably we try to make it so that it's informative but not, mind-boggling for people. So that if you just stumble upon one of our videos, age 20 or 22 or whatever it might be, that you're kind of thinking, geez, this, something I might be interested in. Doesn't seem that complicated, but also for the person that's been watching racing all their life, hopefully there's a couple of nuggets in there that are going to help. And Josh obviously does great work both in the videos and on Twitter in terms of reporting so much, and he's got great contacts in a couple of places that help him report these things, and it's fantastic that he's able to say, like a couple of weeks ago he was talking about how that he thought that Nicky Henderson had another good horse in Walking on Air, and a week later the horse wins by half the track at Newbury, and we've got guys following the channel that are going in and backing the horse and making a few bob off it, and I've always found, especially from my own videos and Let's Talk Racing, when you make a few people a few bob, they get very happy very quickly. So that's, as much as it's not all about betting, it does help.
Absolutely. And talk a little bit about maybe a horse race specifically. So you obviously tip a lot of horses. How would you go about trying to figure out a run-the-mill 16 runner handicap at Cheltenham, or a 24 runner handicap at Cheltenham? Do you what's your kind of strategy? Is there a set strategy? Is it just based on the race sort of thing, or?
Yeah, well, certain races are, certain demands for certain horses, and when it comes to the festival itself, you have to look at the stats to a certain degree. Like, I'm not somebody that plows myself into stats, but novices have good record. Irish novices have even better records, and there's certain trainers as well. Like, you get into, if you're constantly watching the likes of Gordon, the likes of Willie. Even down to some of the slightly smaller trainers in Ireland, even your Robert Tyners, in terms of, small run-of-the-mill racing in Ireland, they have very similar ways of getting their horses to win races, very similar paths they take, might be a couple of quiet runs, and then they'll suddenly spring in their first handicap or second handicap. You might be waiting for cheek pieces to go back on with certain horses. Like, there's plenty of angles you can look into, but certainly, especially with the way Irish racing has slightly dominated in the recent festivals. If you're looking at festival handicaps, you do have to look at these, Gordon Elliott horses, Mullins horses that maybe aren't quite cutting it at graded level and might go to a Martin Piper, a County Hurdle, unexposed. The only problem and flaw with that is you get, say, the Martin Pipe, and I could name you almost 7 or 8 of Gordon's horses that might be a runner in the Martin Pipe, and all would have good chances. So you do have to slightly stick your, pin your colours to the mast to a certain degree, and then you've got to try and make a case for it. And once you make a case, I find it with a lot of guys, if you can make a compelling case, you suddenly believe it. Even if you're maybe against that horse, you can respect it. You can say, I disagree, but that's not a bad case, and that's kind of the whole way we're in. It's all opinions. Some of them are going to be right, some of them are going to be wrong.
And would you watch a lot of horse racing? I'm guessing you'd be watching daily, but would you, if you're missing racing, would you watch a lot of racing replays? What's your kind of, in terms of following horse racing, how far do you go with it?
Yeah, I'd watch an awful lot. I try to keep as up to date as I can. There's certain times of the week, certain times of the month, and that's just simply unsustainable. Like, you're not going to go back home at the end of Stephen's Day, having been at Leopardstown, and watch every single race from Wincanton or Market Raisin or whatever it might be. But I'd be always on the racing post app. You're always looking at results, always looking to see if there's a horse you've thought of, or you've maybe backed last time out, and trying to see whether he's got a better chance this time. Can he win again? Can he go in this time? That sort of stuff. I'm constantly all eagle-eyed. And I know a lot of people have trackers and stuff like that. Trackers to a certain degree almost take the fun out of it for me, because they're almost telling you what you already know and what you've already said. I know you probably won't miss any as a result if you do put them in trackers, but I quite like almost doing it manually. Each evening, going through the cards the next day. Who do you see? And you see some familiar names, especially with Irish racing, which would be my kind of bread and butter, really. There's only 2 or 3 national meetings a week, so there's no excuses not to keep up with it. And with the amount of racing TV replays there are, the amount of interviews there are, the amount of stuff on Twitter and stuff like that. If you're not being able to keep up to date, you're probably in the wrong game.
Yeah, so to keep your comments coming in, and we'll ask a couple to Andrew at the end. So picking up on that point, what in terms of your time of year, it's obviously the spring, but have you any Pacific festival that you really do well every year, and you really go, right, I really fancy myself, say, back in the winter of the Grand National, or what's your kind of best races there that you would kind of look forward to each year and say, I've got a really good chance here of doing well in this race?
Yeah, well, overall, my record probably in handicap chases is not bad, considering that they can be quite difficult, especially the Irish handicap chases. Like, my record in handicap chases in comparison to handicap hurdles is, chalk and cheese, which is interesting, and there's no real rhyme or reason for it. I suppose just maybe when they become handicap chases, there's a little bit more knowledge to go off, a bit more kind of form and information out in the world to go and look at. I'm very much a form based punter. I study form. I try to find the little kind of quirks and little sort of bits and bobs. I'm a big fan of kind of course and distance winners. I'm a big fan of winners returning to handicap marks. This sort of stuff. All different things. People like doing things differently. And I can completely understand that with everyone, but I think once you try find those quirks, try and nail down certain races. Like, I've had massive luck, say, in the plate at Cheltenham on day 3, the Thursday handicap chase over 2.5. God knows how, but like, back to Empire of Dirt in the race, Road to Respect in the race, the Shunter last year, Simply the Bets. I've had a very good run in the race, and I couldn't really tell you why. I've just managed to find the right horse. Now, sometimes they've been near the top of the market, sometimes they've been a double figure price. As for the certain races, say the Coral Cup at Cheltenham, for an example, that honestly I could back 25 out of 26, and the 26th horse would win. I've just that type of record in it. So all different, but as long as you're kind of keeping track of it all and seeing where you're going wrong and seeing where you're going right, that's when you can maybe slightly put in more looking into handicap chases and looking at them long term and seeing what horses will suit certain races.
It is funny you say that, because when you're like, I have a good record in handicap chase and the play, for example, like for some reason I have a really good record in the Boodles. So like, it's probably the toughest race of the festival, and every time I hear commentary like, oh, it's a tough to pick the winner, I was like, speak for yourself. I've smashed it the last couple of years. But I think everyone has that different that different race they look forward to Cheltenham, and everyone has a different relationship with the Cheltenham Festival, and they look forward to something like the Boodles, which is ridiculous. Like, it is probably the toughest betting heat. But then, like you said, the Coral Cup, I'd be similar. I don't think I've ever backed the winner of the Coral Cup. I've never actually backed the winner of the Gold Cup, believe it or not. So in some ways, I don't look forward to that either. So everyone has that different relationship with Cheltenham, which I think kind of adds to it as well, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone has their different, it's just certain things that will always stand in your mind. And I remember, like, I can remember Empire Dirt winning that race like the back of my hand. As if it was yesterday. It was a number of years ago now. I'm sure people will tell you in 10 years' time about Jeff Kidder winning the Boodles at an almighty price this year. And yet, like, Jeff Kidder, he's a decent horse, ended up winning a Grade 1, but like, he's never going to rock up and be any type of champion hurdle horse or anything. Like, he'll probably fade into the relative abyss of horse racing. Yet there'll be some guys out there still clinging on to their 80-1 slip. No different to how every second day on Twitter you're reminded of somebody that backed LeBake at 150-1 in the Supreme. I seem to be the only man in the world that didn't back the horse based off what you hear. Like, I don't know how on earth all these people backed a horse that had refused 3 times in a row. I don't know how you get past that, but it all, as I say, it's all different memories for different people, and that's what makes it so good, because it's very rare that you'd come up and talk to somebody that has the exact same memories as you, and the exact same good times and the exact same bad times.
Keeping on the team at Cheltenham, sorry, just thinking of Jamie Codd. So Jamie Codd tipped him up the knee 50s at the races preview, and then he said last year Bob was a God-given certainty to win. So, and I was against Bob because of the price, and I knew the reason for the price was mainly because of Jamie Codd. But then he wins by half the track, and you kind of wonder why you weren't on. But on the Cheltenham side of things, it's obviously gets a lot. And we spoke about this earlier. It gets a lot of hype And I think a lot of people are saying, like, for example, the Clarence House was brilliant because it was an outside Cheltenham race, and I think there was a bit of buzz about it. Is there too much focus on the Cheltenham Festival in your eyes? And there's talk, I'd say in a few years we could go to 5 days with 6 race cards, and the quality is diluted. Like Kevin Blake would always say, the quality is getting diluted, more diluted. There shouldn't be a Ryanair, there shouldn't be a 2.5 novice chase or not a novice hurdle. So what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, well, you do run that risk, obviously. I'm not a fan of 6 race cards whatsoever on any day of the week. I think you're almost ripping people off trying to charge them 30, 35 quid to go in for 6 races. Like, why isn't there a seventh? I just don't understand it. In that regard, 7 races, half an hour between them, it all suits very well. That being said, look, it's very hard from somebody that's in a situation where you're trying to obviously appease the crowd, and the majority of the crowd do want Cheltenham and do love Cheltenham, and I think everyone does. What would more disappoint me is that sometimes you are kind of almost just gliding through the rest of the season, sleepwalking almost, and it takes a clash like you got on the weekend between those two horses for everyone to suddenly perk their ears and go, "Oh, geez, that's a proper race." That's where we've been watching proper racing. Like, I thought Christmas at Leopardstown was absolutely super. Plenty of grade ones, plenty of good grade ones as well, good finishes, good horses. And yet you can't kind of almost watch any of these horses without thinking, oh, well, what's their Cheltenham target? It's just become the narrative. Like even the Savills Chase, Galvin's just caught up. The race in itself is a super race. He's just gotten up a brilliant ride from Davy Russell. What's everyone saying? Oh, does Galvin have a chance in the Gold Cup now? A second after the race is finished. There's almost no time to digest it anymore. And that's probably a product of social media, with the likes of Twitter and Instagram, and people like hype and good performances. And I'm very much in that camp as well. Like, I hype stuff up, and probably hype stuff up a little bit too much on occasions, but at the same time, you gotta enjoy good things when they come round. There's enough times that you'll go to a race meeting and come away disappointed with how a horse has run, but when you have a horse that you like and it runs well, you might as well go and celebrate it.
Yeah, and even as you were talking there, I was thinking of the Dublin Racing Festival, and what are we, 10 days out here? There's nobody looking at those anti-post markets or building them up with massive previews over the last couple of weeks, and they're fantastic races in themselves. Arguably those Saturday and Sunday are better. Well, they are like 4 grade ones on each card, I think, better than any of the days at Cheltenham. And the quality isn't diluted. And despite the ground concerns, there are a lot of good horses that are going to be running. Just look at the favourites and all them, Honeysuckle, Gallop and Deschamps. It could go on and on. We're not building that up as much. It's just all about Cheltenham. There's definitely, I know the Dublin Racing Festivals try to do this, and I guess in some ways the fact it clashes a small bit with the Six Nations doesn't help things either. But I guess we really should be trying to hype these festivals up as much as possible, as well as Cheltenham. But it's so hard because, and I do it myself, you're talking about Honeysuckle and the Irish Champion Hurdle, but you're really thinking about the Champion Hurdle. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's just being used as a stepping stone, and plenty of horses do that. Now, obviously, they've had a few issues with Leopardstown in recent years with the ground, which has slightly diluted fields. But overall, like, the field standard at the Dublin Racing Festival has been superb. I think the fact that you're only 2 weeks away from the Dublin Racing Festival now, and yet you've got all these competitive handicaps, and there's no markets in sight, which doesn't help. The part of people almost trying to unearth the winner of the Boodles in the first week of January, anti-post, is because the market is there, and people don't have anything to do on a Wednesday afternoon. Let's have a look at the anti-post market, try and make a case for something. As for all the handicap entries are now out for the Dublin Racing Festival, and there's plenty of those races that have no market at the moment, no anti-post market to dive in on. And I do think maybe it wouldn't kind of make any difference. Maybe it'd be no skin off anyone's nose, but I think it would help. It would give a bit more narrative. It would give an opportunity for people to look into these races more in depth at a longer way out, and try to pick apart these handicaps and who's potentially going to win it and who's potentially going to be, overpriced at anti-post terms that might go and contract. You get it with the Thyestes. You could have bet on the Thyestes 2 weeks ago, and plenty of people did because everyone's back Longhouse Poet. But you can't do it 2 weeks on instead of the 2 mile handicap chase, the 2.5 mile handicap chase, which look to be really lively betting heats. So It is something that somewhat has opened my eyes this year. It's not something I kind of recognised the previous years, but I've been a little bit interested why there isn't a
Mm.
market and why we can't kind of hype these races up betting wise.
Do you have any reason why?
I don't know. They obviously have their own ideas that it's just a provisional set of entries, and I get that. And
Mm.
you wouldn't have anti-post prices for your ordinary handicap chase on the weekend even yet. I think at times, especially with Irish racing, the kind of the odds compiling can sometimes be a little bit slow off the mark. That you're only getting prices, the night before at 6 o'clock or 6:30, and sometimes they're even very soft prices. So you have to wait until the morning of the race for any sort of hard price to be available. So I, I don't know why. I would have thought it would help bookmakers if there's more time to bet. More people are going to bet, but that they obviously have their reasons, and they don't probably feel that they're going to get enough action and enough people putting their hard-earned money on the line anti-post and warrant putting the market up.
Looking ahead then to this year's spring festivals, what's Andrew Blair White's plan? What sort of meetings are you taking in between the Dublin Racing Festival, Cheltenham, Aintree? Any of those you're heading to Punchestown?
Yeah, look, I try to get to as much racing as possible. I think there's a lot of people out there that kind of say a lot of things about racing, and they're all on their couch watching it. And I like being there. I think you learn the most when you're there, and you pick up little tidbits that you mightn't have seen otherwise. And that's what I like to do. I'll be at Nace on Sunday, hopefully watching Statler and on Baton and San Felician. I'll be then at the Dublin Racing Festival. I'm hopefully going to Nace the following Saturday. I'll go to Leopardstown for their end of season meeting, and then I'm over in Cheltenham this year for the full 4 days, which is brilliant. I haven't been to Aintree yet, which is on the bucket list. I'm probably not going to be able to get over to it this year just because of work commitments, but it certainly will be on the bucket list sooner rather than later. And obviously Punchestown, I usually try to get down for a day or two. I find it hard to do the full 5 days at Punchestown because it is a big bifter, and I suppose there's so much kind of hype around it, and it's that kind of slightly awkward times as well from a work perspective. But no, I try to get in as much racing as possible because I don't go to much in the summer. I don't go to the Curragh, or don't go to even Leopardstown that much for flat racing. So why wouldn't you go when you've got the chance and you've got the opportunity to see all these good horses right now?
Have you done 4 days at Cheltenham before?
Yep, yeah. First time
Okay,
I went in 2020, I did the full 4. So I wouldn't say I'm accustomed to it. I feel I need a few more years of experience before I could say that. But I certainly gave it a good stab first year.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, it's good to have that experience, but yeah, Jesus, it's a long old road. A few questions in here. So, what's your favorite day at Cheltenham? Which is an interesting question because there's a lot of things that obviously go into it.
Yeah, very hard. Every year it kind of changes. I think this time round, you're looking forward to this year. I suspect Tuesday might well be the best day because Supreme looks such a good race. Arca looks a good race. Often can depend on what sort of standard of racing you have. Like when the Champion Chase is a super race, it sometimes can kind of hog the narrative. But for me, really, I seem to be in the heavy minority really with this. I think Gold Cup Day is still class. Like people seem to underrate Gold Cup Day because that it's a hard betting day, and I understand it's a hard betting day, but at the same stage you've got lively heats. Like you very rarely have a short price horse in the Triumph. You never have a short price horse in the Bartlett. You've got the County Hurdle in there, the Fox Hunters in there. The Grand Annual, sorry, isn't on it anymore. But you've got the Mayor's Chase, which helps it now, and the Martin Pipe to finish up. Like I think it's a good card, and you've got the best race of the whole week and potentially the best race of the whole year in the Gold Cup. And the fact that I was there to see my beloved album photo win was an absolute godsend, really, because it certainly sent me home very happy on that Saturday morning.
It's amazing, like, because we spoke about everyone having a different relationship with the Cheltenham Festival, and I couldn't disagree more with Friday. Like that's the day I just, for not just winners, which I haven't had that many on a Friday, but I don't know, it's the end of the week. Like for me, I think this year Wednesday would be the best, but I think Thursday has a good mix of races and competitive races but it just shows you everyone has that different relationship with the festival, like it. So it's personal preference. But Friday does get crowded a bit, so I am a small bit surprised with your answer there.
Yeah, well, it's just I don't see why it gets crabbed when you've got the Gold Cup in the middle of the day. Like it's such a good race. It very rarely disappoints. And there's some decent enough races, in the sub card around it as well. And you can get off on a good story, a good racing story in the Fox Hunters. You can get some good horses out of the other races. And if you manage to find a winner of one of those first three races on the card, your day is set, because the Triumph, County and Bartlett are probably three of the hardest races you're going to find.
Yeah, and obviously the 2 bank holidays in Ireland now this year, so the country be going nuts from Thursday to Thursday and Friday at Cheltenham. Does Paul Nolan's stable have a place chance in the champion bumper? Does Paul Nolan have some good horses this year in general for the festival? I guess would be a good way, from Lawrence Scott there on YouTube.
Yeah, look, he's got, it's been an up and down year for him. Overall, it's been a great year. Obviously, unfortunately, though, losing latest exhibition would have been a major loss to that stable. They loved him dearly down there, and he was a class horse. But they've some nice young stock in there. They've got 2 horses that potentially might run in that champion bumper. They've got the lad that won at Navan on Saturday, Joyo Machan. He's a nice horse. He ran very well at Leopardstown. He did it very nicely at Navan as well. But certainly, and I'm not saying for a second that I have all the answers, but I certainly get the strong impression that they believe the other lad, Xander Clegane, is a superior horse to him. I know he's in the entries for the Dublin Racing Festival. I've been told unless the ground softens up plenty, he will not run there. They might run him in the Nace race the following week. There's a listed bumper there, and he will, depending on how he runs in that, he'll go to Cheltenham as well. So I think the 2 of them are good chances. If I was to back either of them at the prices right now, though, I would be favouring Xander Clegane, though I think he could be a real prospect.
And just on the Paul Nolan theme, you've been to his stable. Would you recommend like stable visits for those that are into horse racing that haven't quite got around to visiting in the stable? Because there are various times of the year where you can organise and be able to go and look at all these superstars.
Yeah, definitely. If you ever get the opportunity to go anywhere, take it with both hands, because you wouldn't understand until you go down to these stables, how well they're cared for, how nice the people in the yards are. Like you kind of couldn't believe it. Like I went down to Paul Nolan's there last April time, and I'm no more than a fan, and yet everyone is saying, is in such good form. Everyone was so accommodating in terms of if you wanted a photo with horses. Like I was down, obviously Mrs. Milner just won at Cheltenham the month before. Me and my dad are outside Mrs. Milner's stable, and a girl comes up to us, says, "You guys fire in there, and I'll take a photo of the 2 of you there." And, these are moments that you can't buy, really. I was lucky enough when I was over with Josh that I've been to Ollie Murphy's, Fergal's, and we were down in Christian Williams as well, which was super. He's a cast man, Christian Williams, down in Wales. He's an absolute living legend down there. Not a single person in his town doesn't know who he is. But these are fantastic places, and the horses are so well cared for. They're in, they're so nice to go and pat and have a few photos with, and people that usually work in these yards are always so accommodating that I couldn't thank them enough. And for Paul Nolan and his yard, that's probably where, obviously I was a big fan of the yard, and the fact that they made such an effort. A guy called Davey Boland, who actually does an awful lot of great work on YouTube and Twitter on racing. It's Inside Track. There's a lot of point-to-point stuff. He kind of got me able to go down there, and I can't thank Davey and everyone down in the yard enough, because it was a morning I'll never forget.
Yeah, and I love seeing that content from stables like yourselves and other people who visited stables as well, and seeing those horses. A couple of questions about album photos, so be remiss of me not to ask you, does he have a small squeak in the Gold Cup? I put into your album photo propaganda the 3rd year he ran in the Gold Cup, which was last year, and obviously he didn't win. So again, of course, I haven't backed the winner of the Gold Cup yet. So for you, does he have a chance this year, maybe in an each way price? I think he's around 10 or 11.0.
Yeah, I think he does have an each way chance. I don't think it's maybe one of the strongest races in the year. I don't think he's done anything wrong. I see he's gotten a few fishy entries over hurdles. I doubt they'll take any of those up. I think that's almost for show more than anything. But he did a grand at Tramore. If he runs to the exact same way he ran last year, even, I think he'll be in the frame. He probably will be short of the mark from a win perspective if runs to that exact same form again. But if horses underperform, Henry's horses have been a little bit hit and miss so far this season. You couldn't be backing either of those two horses with the greatest amount of confidence, even though they both have their respective chances. And Galvin, still has to go and probably prove that he's up to winning a Gold Cup. He might be able to, but he still has to beat a horse like Album Photo, who's been there and done that. So I certainly wouldn't put people off having a few quid on him.
And Shacken, another one of your Foxrock Church horses.
Yeah, well, the naysayers got to me last year with Shacken.
Put the kettle on. I did try and warn you.
Yeah, you did, and I didn't listen, and I got burnt that way. But look, I just hope Shacken's okay. I have bad feeling that he's not potentially in the best way at the moment. He obviously didn't run very well at Sandown. There seems to be an injury after it. You'd like to see him at the Dublin Racing Festival. I don't know whether he will or not. And I think if he doesn't run at the Dublin Racing Festival, it's going to be a massive fight against time to get him to run at Cheltenham. So probably one to keep on the back burner for now. At his best, he's as good as a 2-mile chaser as you're going to find. But unfortunately, he's probably not quite at his best just at this moment in time.
One final quick answer, one-word answer from me. Leopardstown or Cheltenham?
Leopardstown.
Wow, see, that's amazing. I'm 100% Cheltenham, but it's amazing the relationship you have with Leopardstown. That's great.
Yeah, well, it's just as you said earlier, it's like a home away from home. I love going up there. I love the kind of setup you have, the routine I get into, and Cheltenham's fantastic. And geez, probably sounds stupid for me picking Leopardstown over Cheltenham, but I've just so many good memories, so many young memories at Leopardstown as well that it probably just shades the vote.
And then finally, just the final word on people that don't follow horse racing as much as yourself, or are kind of trying to get into horse racing. And we've touched on a lot of these points. We'll kind of summarize it for what makes the sport so great in about 30 seconds or so. Put you on the spot.
Yeah, well, it's a great story sport. You can go live. You can get great access. You can get better access than you can get at the majority of the sports. You think of football, rugby. You're up in the top of the stand. You can't get close to them. You can be right beside them in the parade ring. You can then go out. You can have a bet. You can watch the race. Go clap them in. There's so many good things. Both socially and if you're trying to get into it from a betting point of view, or if you're trying to get into it from a liking of a sport point of view. There's so many kind of good aspects to it that many of these courses provide. It's usually a very friendly community. I can't think of that many people I've come across in racing that haven't been very accommodating and very friendly, both on course and off course. So if you want to get involved in a sport that's inclusive, in a sport that you can do so much with, from a content perspective or from just a watching brief perspective, horse racing certainly for me has been fantastic over the last number of years.
Yeah, I do echo those sentiments. Andrew, thanks a mil for coming on Matchbook Meets episode 1.
No worries, Dan. Real pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
For those watching, we really appreciate you listening. Do hit that like button. As I said, it does help us reach more people. Until next month on Matchbook Meets, take care.